Our message to the United States Senate is real simple. The American people don't want the government shut down, and they don't want Obamacare.
All right, now to the Senate's hands. So the guy leading the fight there against the president's health care law, Texas Republican Ted Cruz. Senator, very good to have you back. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's always great to join you, Neil.
Boy, you know how to generate heat. You're a newly minted senator, and almost from the day of your arrival, you've been like the bull in the china shop. Now even some fellow Republicans, particularly those in the House, are saying, wait a minute, is he really for this defunding effort or not? What say you?
Well, look, what I say is today was a terrific day. House conservatives stood up. They stuck their neck out. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, the vote we had today to defund Obamacare was considered impossible by Washington pundits. And today was a victory for House conservatives. It was a victory for House leadership, for Speaker Boehner. But most importantly, it was a victory for the American people, because the reason the House voted decisively today in a bipartisan vote to defund Obamacare is because the American people have risen up in incredible numbers saying Obamacare isn't working. It's the biggest job killer in the country. It is hurting millions of Americans, and we need to stop it. And I salute the House for passing this continuing resolution defunding Obamacare. And the Speaker's exactly right. Now it's up to Harry Reid. Now it is up to the Senate to step forward and do the same thing the House has done. Listen to the American people.
Harry Reid says it's going nowhere in the Senate. What do you think?
Well, that is certainly what he has said, and I'm sure that's his intention. And so, you know, Neil, this process was always going to involve a series of steps. The first step was to unify and mobilize the American people. And we've seen over 1.5 million Americans sign the national petition at don'tfundit.com, reach out and call their representatives. The next step is what happened today, to unify House Republicans, for them to stand strong for conservative principles to defund Obamacare. And they did that today, which was a real show of courage. The next step that's going to play out next week is for Senate Republicans to unify, for Senate Republicans to come together and to support House Republicans. I am hopeful that we'll see every Senate Republican come together. Now, Harry Reid's going to try to play procedural games, and in particular, what he really, really wants, according to the reports that his team is leaking out, is that he really, really wants a vote to fund Obamacare using just a 51-vote threshold, which lets him do it on a straight party line vote with only Democrats. Now, I don't think Republicans should let him do that. And if he tries to play those games, if he tries to use a 51-vote threshold to let Democrats fund Obamacare, I'm hopeful all 46 Republicans will stand unified side by side with Republicans in the House and fight to defund Obamacare.
Do you know of many Republicans who won't?
Well, it's not clear at this point. There's been a lot of discussion, and what's interesting is that people's positions have been moving. And the reason they've been moving is frankly, Neil, the process is working. That we've seen, you know, over 1.5 million people go to don'tfundit.com. When you get 1.5 million people signing a national petition, calling their senators, calling their elected representatives, it gets people's attention. And, you know, a lot of people say, all right, well, what happens even if Republicans stand together? If Republicans stand together, Harry Reid might choose to kill the continuing resolution and to threaten a government shutdown. I don't think Harry Reid should do that, but he might be extreme enough to do that. If that happens, then the ball will shift back to the House, and I think the House can systematically respond. I hope they would respond to the Senate if Harry Reid does try to force a government shutdown by passing one continuing resolution after another, funding each specific piece of government, starting off with funding the military. Send it over and say, all right, Harry Reid, are the Senate Democrats, is President Obama going to shut down the military? Is that what you want to do? And see if Harry Reid's willing to do that.
Would every one of those measures, Senator, have attached to it out of the House, I'm saying here, this defunding health care initiative?
No, I would include, for things like funding the military, I would send it just as a clean, focused, continuing resolution, as a standalone, just on the military. And I'd do it one at a time. I hope the House does that.
Right.
If the Senate tries to kill this.
All right. Now, you've heard from the likes of Karl Rove and mainstream Republicans who say they feel for your passion, they feel for this Republican zeal and antipathy toward the health care law, but the numbers don't favor this happening, that in the Senate, and you almost acknowledge this yourself when you recognize just the math in the Senate, Democrats in control, and then going on to the president, if it even got that far, he'd veto it and he'd be protected. He'd have enough to avoid an override. But it got some House Republicans angry at you, including Arkansas Republican Griffin. I want you to listen to this.
The folks in the Senate that have been talking about defunding and delaying and repealing and all these different options, they've been asking for the ball. Well, we're going to give them the ball.
Congressman, were you specifically citing Senators Lee and Cruz as those Republicans who talked a good game but didn't really follow through?
What I was doing is challenging the ones that talk a lot over there.
I want to be specific. You were talking about those two gentlemen.
Yeah.
You know, Senator, I read all your comments, and you were very, very clear about your passion for doing this, but you also recognized the math in doing this, so you were obviously walking a tough line there. But do you think that you're kind of damned if you do or damned if you don't now?
Look, from day one, I have said that this is going to be a long process. I believe we can win this fight, and I don't think anyone can look at what I've said and done, what Mike Lee has said and done, and have any doubt that we are going to fight with every ounce of breath in our bodies to defund Obamacare. But it's going to be an iterative fight. And the point that I made is I said, listen, Harry Reid has 54 Democrats. If he wants, he can kill the continuing resolution. He can shut it down at this stage. And if that happens, that shouldn't set the stage then for the it goes back to the House. And the only way we win, the only way we ultimately move the votes in the Senate is for the House to continue to stand strong, to stand firm, to start sending over limited CRs, funding the military, funding different pieces of the government one at a time. And if we stand firm, I mean, people ask, how do you win? Well, the way you win is we keep making the case to the American people. And once we unify, first we've got to unify Republicans in the Senate. I hope we're going to do that this week. Once that happens, then you start moving red state Democrats over one at a time. And people say, well, none of them have gone over yet. Well, of course not. Republicans aren't unified yet. No Democrat's going to join us until Republicans are unified. And I'll tell you, look, if you are a red state Democrat from Arkansas, from Louisiana, and you start getting 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 calls from your constituents saying Obamacare is killing our jobs, it is hurting Americans, suddenly your calculus changes. And if we win the argument with the...
I'm sorry, sir. Would you lead a filibuster to that effect?
I will use any and all procedural means that are available. We don't know for sure how Harry Reid is going to tee this up.
Right.
But rest assured that I will use any and all procedural means we have in front of us.
You know, a conservative firebrand, Mark Levin, was saying recently that maybe the way for Republicans to throttle this through their own minds is to even risk losing for a cause in the event that it puts a stamp on your passion. I'm paraphrasing here, but he used the example of Republicans who stood their ground and stood with Ronald Reagan in 1976 and came within a lick of seeing him almost beat Gerald Ford, President Ford at the time, for the nomination, to really achieve victory in overwhelming fashion 4 years later. What do you think of that mindset? Stumble, even lose before winning for something bigger?
Well, let me say three things. Number one, I know for sure that you lose 100% of the battles that you begin by surrendering. And all these Republicans who say we can't win, if they want, these various pundits want us to surrender at the outset, that will make sure we can't win. Number two, I'll point out, in many ways, we are winning right now. Look, this vote today was historic, and 2 weeks ago people thought it would be impossible. It was a bipartisan vote in the House to defund Obamacare. You look at polling this week, the Wall Street Journal came out with it. For the first time in years, Republicans are leading on health care. And Neil, I'm going to suggest to you that is because we're standing up and fighting to defund Obamacare. Republicans are talking about how Obamacare is killing jobs, forcing people into part-time work, driving up premiums, causing people to lose their health insurance. But number three, I believe we're going to win this fight as we persuade the American people. And let me point to an example.
Real quick, Senator, I'm sorry.
Look at what happened with Syria. When Syria started, you had the president, you had leadership in both houses all saying we were going to attack Syria. The American people spoke up in overwhelming numbers and said, We don't want that. That's not in America's interest. And leaders from both parties listened. We need Harry Reid, we need Senate Democrats to listen to the American people. That's how we win this fight.
Ted Cruz, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure having you. Senator Ted Cruz.